it's so important to recognize that, sometimes, truth is stranger than fiction, right? But these true
Yes.
stories, these historical stories, it's so important to not overlook the details. But that takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of work.
Yeah, it does. But for me, for me, my writing is like a time sponge, and I have to actually take my, the alarm on my, the timer on my clock, my watch, my phone, and I have to set it for an hour to remind myself to get up and move around, and then go back to my research or go back to my writing, because I get that absorbed in it, which really is a treat, to tell you the truth. It's really not work. It's fun.
It sounds like it's a true love of yours.
Yeah, it is. It is. I could be doing other things, but this is really what I want to do most. And this is what I'm doing.
It's such a service to just to history. This type of research. You also wrote a book in 2014. I just wanted to ask you about it. Battleground, New Jersey, Vanderbilt, Hague, and their fight for justice. Just tell us a little bit about what that was about.
That's a history of the prelude to New Jersey's 1947 Constitution. Prior to our adoption of the 47 Constitution, our judiciary was a mess. We had 17 different courts with 17 different sets of rules. The rules were adopted by the legislature. They were never changed after they were adopted. And so, and some of the judges were, political officers. Some of them ran for office to be a judge. Some of them were judges and were involved in politics. New Jersey's system was corrupt. And so to get a fair shake, you had to have a lawyer that was politically connected, or you had to be politically connected yourself if you became a party to a lawsuit. And that Arthur Vanderbilt has always been one of my heroes. But I knew that somebody needed to tell the story of what went on, and what it was really the Constitution's amendment got caught up in a religious war, which was a fight between the Irish Catholics in Hudson County and the Protestant Republicans in Essex County, and as much as Vanderbilt tried, he could not even get a question on the ballot. And then when they finally did, it was defeated. And it took a young governor from Haddonfield, his name is escaping me right now, but I will remember it, who became governor. And he negotiated a deal with Frank Hague, who was boss of Hudson County in Jersey City. Driscoll was the name of the governor from Haddonfield. So it's a very involved story, but it's an important story if you want to understand New Jersey's court system. Now, that wasn't the title I chose. I reached out to Rutgers, and they said they wanted to publish the book, but because it's an academic press, they wouldn't go for my title. My title was Street Fight.
I like that title.
Oh, I do too. And that was the title that I wanted for Battleground, New Jersey. But Rutgers' mindset was, this is an academic press. That title is really not, becoming of something that, we want to publish. And so they had final say on the title, and I didn't. But I still had the, let's say, the experience of the academic rigor of working with a university press, which, believe me, is quite rigorous in terms of the demands that they make for documenting things and moving forward and writing and rewriting, which is okay. That's what writing is. It's rewriting. But the book was much fun. But probably one of the takeaways was that I found out that Arthur Vanderbilt had clay feet. And what I mean by that is, in doing my research at Wesleyan University up in Connecticut, which is where all his personal files are, I came across a collection of letters and correspondence between Vanderbilt and a gentleman by the name of David Dayton McKean, who was a former professor at Princeton and then had moved on to Dartmouth. And McKean authored a book entitled The Boss: The Hague Machine in Action. and it really was a political hit job. And I read the book for the first time when I was like my sophomore or junior year in college at St. John's, and then read the whole book, read portions, because it's still looked at as a book that is a fine explanation of how, old style political machines worked. And then I reread portions of the book when I wrote Battleground, New Jersey, because Nucky Johnson had a relationship with Frank Hague. One was a Democrat, the other one was a Republican, but the two of them scratched each other's back and made things happen and benefited one another. And now I'm reading the book again in connection with Frank Hague and Arthur Vanderbilt. And lo and behold, I spent a long weekend at Wesleyan University, and I'm going through Vanderbilt's files, and I come across what's known as Box 96. And in it is correspondence between the author of The Boss, David Dayton McKean, and Arthur Vanderbilt. And then when you read that correspondence, there's only one takeaway, which is that Arthur Vanderbilt was a co-author who, kept his name from being part of it. He rewrote entire chapters. He really had a strong hatred for Frank Hague, and did everything he could to do a political hit job on him. And I'm not defending Frank Hague, but you got to keep in mind, Frank Hague had a sixth grade education. His family and all of his contemporaries had been dumped on by the Protestants. And so he viewed politics as a religious war. And so Frank Hague did what he did to, overcome discrimination, by Protestants, Republican WASPs. And he had his way for a very long time in New Jersey politics. And again, it took Alfred Driscoll, who was a very savvy, young, capable lawyer from Haddonfield, who became governor as a Republican. And he was the one who was able to make a deal with Hague so that Hague would stop blocking any sort of efforts to reform the Constitution, because in Jersey City, the vote was whatever Frank Hague wanted the vote to be. And so, you could have a gubernatorial contest, and if Frank Hague, would hold out Hudson County's vote until the very end to see how much the Democratic candidate needed, he'd come up with that vote. So, it was a very corrupt politician, but also someone who felt that he had been wronged terribly by the Republicans. And so he waged quite a war.